Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel, CSM Mistakes Were Made. In the following video, I describe how I make some socks called no-show, let's see, they're heel tab no-show socks. And it is a free pattern that was written by Sue Vunesky, and she has provided it free of charge just by going to CSM Supplies website. As I described in the video, I think you have to register or put it in a shopping basket, but you won't be charged for it. It's a nice pattern, and I really like to recommend it for new crankers because it's skill building in the sense that you have an opportunity to crank essentially 3 sets of short rows. The heel tab is a set of short rows. It's almost like a mini heel, and then a very deep heel, and then a toe, a normal toe. So I've used this sock yarn, which is by Lang. It's a nice soft sock weight, fingering weight yarn with 25% polyamide. It's a nice product. It really softened up nicely after I washed it and blocked it. I have sadly made mistakes not only during the making of the socks, which I think are the fun parts, but also during the videotaping and capturing. The sound quality sometimes goes bad, and sometimes the image is blurry, but I'm trying to work out all of these challenges with each new video I put out. So please bear with me and let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks. Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. CSM Mistakes Were Made. We're going to load our cast-on bonnet onto my 72 slot cylinder today, and we're going to try to make a pair of, let's see, they're called heel tab no-show socks. And this is the pattern. Mine's kind of beat up, like an old recipe gets kind of stained. Mine's kind of beat up, but this can be found on CSM Supplies. It's a free pattern. All you do is go onto their website, and you have to, I think you have to create an account and put it in your cart. And when you check out, it'll be free. But yes, it's a free download. It was a pattern written by Sue Vunesky, one of the most experienced and most knowledgeable crankers in our hobby, and it's a really great pattern that I recommend for, especially for new crankers, in that it is a pattern that doesn't involve a ribber, which makes it slightly more user-friendly for beginners, and it requires some skills in building short rows. So you get 3 opportunities. You get the heel and the toe, like most socks, but you also get the third opportunity to do short rows with that little heel tab. So I think it's a really good skill building set of socks to make. I'm going to be cranking it out of this yarn. This was rejected by a friend of mine. I picked it up for her to crank in. I didn't really know what she wanted, but I picked this up and she said, can you use that? So I took it back, and it's sock yarn from Lang. It's a sock yarn I've used before, but not in this colorway. And if you're interested in the colorway, it is hard to find. 901.0361. So that's memorable. So we've got the cast-on bonnet loaded, and I'll get some of my waste yarn here. This is reused TAM acrylic waste yarn, and I just have so much. It will last me into the next century. So yeah, I like to have on hand a couple of different waste yarn colors. It's always very good to have contrasting colors in waste yarn when you're needing to visually identify the project yarn from the waste yarn. In this case, let me think about this. I think it's been a while since I've made socks with like this before. We're going to do a hung hem, so it doesn't. So my choice of yarn doesn't really impact how I separate it. It's not going to be too important. So the bottom line is that the fact that this is yellow and there's a lot of yellow in the yarn isn't going to matter. I'm going to crank several rows of the waste yarn. Okay, so I got one more row to go. I'm going to stop at my needle number 1. Needle number 1 is just about to close, which is a very good position for needle number 1 to be in, because we'll be adding some ravel cord now. And I just I treated myself to a brand new strand of this beautiful ravel cord. It's a 80-pound test line, fishing line. And my old stuff, well, I'll get it in a second. I'll show you. My old stuff was still good, but it's lost a little bit of its color. Does that matter? No. But I thought, I'm just going to get it. And I needed to cut it a little bit longer, actually, for 72 needles that are all in work. My previous strand was just barely enough to get around the cylinder once. So I kind of needed to do this. I'm going to crank this in. And now, so see how there wasn't much left. And I purposely made this just a little bit longer than the previous one, because when I normally cast on, I'm casting on every other needle, and it doesn't require such a long piece. But that one is good. That'll last me a while. All right, so we're cast on. We're now going to start our project yarn. And I'm going to put it through my yarn topper. Sometimes when I get to this point, I think, oh, wait a second. Should I pay attention to what I'm starting with so that I can possibly get a match? So this is potentially a matchy-matchy sock. With that in mind, when you start a pair of socks that has manufactured stripes or self-striping or a pattern of some sort, if you want to get a match, it's always good to pay attention to the first part of the yarn. And I didn't even think about this till just now. So what I do is I pay attention to where there's a color change, and there's a color change right here from this pretty light green to the lighter green, almost yellow, right there. So I'm going to measure that. And measure is kind of a loose term. I'm going to see how long it is relative to my table. And it's roughly 1 table width. So if you were a real stickler, perhaps you would actually take a tape measure out. I am not that much of a stickler, but I am going to take note of it so that if I want to try to reproduce this, I can. So I'm going to do 72, and I'm going to say 1 table green before yellow. Okay, so if I do want a matchy-matchy set of socks, I can. I have the choice now. I have the option. I may or may not act on that option, but now I do have that, leaving just a tiny tail that I'll show you how I take care of it. When you have a hung hem sock, it's pretty locked in. The tail that you leave, and you know, hand knitters know all about weaving in tails that could become loose, or they just need to be taken care of. With hung hem socks, this little tail is locked in already by the process of doing a hung hem, and so we're really not needing to do anything fancy with it. We can just knit it in on the next round, which is what I plan to do. All right, so I make sure I've got everything. Now, the pattern calls for using the heel spring for the whole thing. How does she words it? Yeah, keep knit using your normal sock tension with the heel spring on throughout. got my yarn in, I've got everything started. So it calls for knitting 10 rows. I'm going to reset my counter. Row 1 has already begun, so I'm at row 1. Look what I do next. I'm going to take this little tail that we talked about, and I'm going to put it in the yarn carrier, and so there are 2 strands that will be knitted in for the next round. And it's thicker yarn here, but it's fine. It won't show. It'll be a hung hem anyway, but that takes care of that. That yarn tail isn't a concern anymore. Now, let's just, for the sake of argument, say you forget to do that. I believe you could probably still do this on the 3rd round. So we did it on the 2nd round. You can do it on the 3rd round, or you could do it actually when you hang the hem. So that is another option. That little tail will be accessible when we actually lift up the knitting to hang the hem. So there are a couple of opportunities to do that. Okay, so I'm going to do 10 rows. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. 9 3/4 is I have to think about this for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Knit 10 rows, stopping in the front at 9 3/4. So it's been a while since I've done this, and so I'm trying to think, do I want it to be 10 3/4? No, I'll just settle for 9 3/4 like the pattern calls for. Now, we're going to do a heel tab next, and the heel tab requires a lot of needles to be taken out of work. Here are my halfway points. Needle number 1 is here. If on a 72 slot cylinder, which this is, I'm going to take out, well, here, I'll show you. I'll take out all of the ones that all of the ones that would be normally taken out of work, say for a toe, okay? And 6 extra. So I'm going to lift 2, 4, 6 on this side, and 2, 4, and my V-cam is in the way for me to lift these further, but I will, once I'm up at 12, I'll lift that. All right, so I'm going to, let's see, decrease. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crank around to 12 o'clock, lift these other ones out of work. So there's 2, 4, and then 2 more. So I've got 6 on this side, 6 on this side, also out of work. So we're creating a little heel tab right in here, and we're only going to reduce 5 times, which, yes. So as most people know, the decreases come first. So I'm going to decrease once. And then the same over here. That's 1 and 1. And here's 2 and 2. And here's 3 and 3. My stitches are riding up. And 4. I'm really taking a chance, but I'm going to do it. 4 and 4. It really sounded funny, didn't it? So I'll put the one heel fork in. I think should do it. So I've lifted what essentially is the 5th needle, 5th on that side, and 5th on this side. All right, so that completes the decreases for the heel tab. Now we're going to go back out to the increases 5 times. 1, 1. And I'm going to put 2 heel forks in, because what I can see, I'm not sure you can see, but I had 1 needle fail to knit, and that generally indicates that there's not enough weight. So we're going to get that. I just got this new pick tool, and I don't like it quite as well as my old Addy. So let's use the old Addy pick tool. That's the one I'm used to. So we knit that one in. And we have done one increase on each side. So here's number 2 increase. Here's number 2 increase on the left. Yep, that same needle didn't catch it. So it's going to be hand knitted in. I'll check to see if I've bent the latch or something, but it does seem on my old machine has its own little quirks that it just has. It's just on this in this area of my cylinder, I have chronic problems right there. I don't know what the problem is, but all right. And this will be 3. But you know, when there's an interruption just like we had, it pays to kind of count again. So we were 6 in where we started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those all have old stitches on them. This will be the 3rd increase on the right. And here's the 3rd increase on the left. And those knitted that time. Here's the 4th increase on the right. And the 4th increase on the left. And this should be our last one. And the last one here. Now we're going to stop right in the middle because we need to put all these back into work and knit 10 more rows. And then hang the hem. So the heel tab becomes kind of the center, the pivot point basically the middle of the hung hem. And we're going to make sure all of these latches are open. These cannot go down yet because the V-cam is right in here, so you have to kind of do things in stages. Just reset my counter, and you know, I'm going to be a responsible adult and put all 3 heel forks in just so I can avoid issues. So now this little tiny pocket is weighted properly, so we should be good to go. All right, so I have to do 10, and then before you start, it's always good to know where you're going to be stopping. And we're going to stop also at 6 o'clock, and we're going to hang the hem after we do 10 rows. All right. Oh, see, I just almost forgot to lower these, but I got a reprieve somehow. I didn't have a problem. Somehow it worked out. Okay, so that's 1. Now let me just point something out. I think what distracted me was the little holes that develop here and here don't show on the heel tab. So as most people know, we do go to a big effort, don't we, when we do heels to do some kind of magic with the edge stitches to avoid these holes at the heel. On a no-show heel tab, this little tab isn't going to show. So that's what I wanted to show. That's what distracted me. All right, so we're going to keep going. And the stitches are tight, but I think we'll be okay. 9 3/4. Okay, so this is now preparing to hang the hem. And it's important to take the weights off. This is probably going to get in my way, so I'll put it over here. And get your trusty pick tool and get set to hang the hem. Now, I love gadgets. So I was given this by somebody I met at Ham Lake, Evie, and she gave this to me. So here's what I'm going to do with it. There's no weight on this machine, and everything's kind of floppy. But here, if I use this as a little kind of closer, and I take a medium-sized weight like that, then I've kind of got enough weight on here so it's not nothing, but it's not too much. And I have a smaller one. I think I'll use this one. Okay, that little device with a tiny bit of weight so that I can hang the hem. So we pull things up and we grab, I'm going to use this newer pick tool here. And as I like to, I like to share with people what I learned, that when we're selecting little loops, that is the first one. I'm going to see if maybe I can zoom in. And it fell out. What I'm trying to get with this is the first loop. So I'm going to hang that loop. Now, it's not a purl bump. It isn't a purl bump. It's a running thread. A purl bump would be like this. We're not hanging the purl bump. We're hanging a running thread. And what's interesting to me is that on a 72 slot cylinder, you have a running thread between those, and you have 71 running threads. That little bit of trivia maybe would help those of us who were mystified when we get to the last stitch over here after we've gone all the way around and we can't find the loop because there isn't one, because we've only made 71 running loops, not 72. But we never really sweat it because we can easily find something to put on that needle. Hold this down when we crank forward. I believe yes, it does. It calls for an option that I'm going to take for this pattern is 5 pre-heel rows, and I'm going to take that option. So I'm going to reset my counter, and I'm going to hold this down. As we mentioned before, there's not much weight holding. It's very floppy. So hold this down, and there we go. And now, of course, we have to finish hanging the hem, but we've started the first of 5 pre-heel rows. Not too much in love with this yarn. I do think it's quite nice for these little no-show socks, though, for summer. My son likes to run, and he tells me that the wool socks I knit him are the ones he chooses to wear when he runs. And well, maybe I'll give these to him. And he's such a cutie. He doesn't really care what color things are, so it's sweet. My daughter wears socks that I make her. She lives in California, and we have had a discussion how cranked socks and hand knit socks, to a certain extent, have one liability if they're, she says it doesn't happen with a wool sock so much, but with the cotton socks I've knit her, the purl bumps inside are very hard on her feet. She likes to go hiking, and so we tell folks when I give them a pair of socks that sometimes purl bumps can be irritating, and maybe see how they do on hikes before they wear these. All right. Here we are, just like I had mentioned. We started with needle number 1. We hung a hem here. We've already knitted in. A few have knitted in. Here's cylinder needle number 71. Cylinder needle number 72, the last in a series, is naked so far. It doesn't have a hung loop of yarn on it because there isn't one. So what I do is I just kind of dig around, and I usually find one from just below it in the vicinity. I find one here, and I just pop it on there. I think it's from one row below, and it works fine. But that's the whole thing with the running thread is there's one fewer than you need, but it works out. Miraculous, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to do 5 rows, and the first row of a hung hem is kind of hard to crank, and the stitches do ride up because you're knitting 2 stitches together. So let's really muscle that. So that's 1, 2, 4, and then here's 5. Now we're about ready to do a heel. If you recall, we had the opportunity to do short rows for the heel tab in here. Now it's the opposite situation. We're going to keep many, many more needles in work to do a deep heel. So whereas the heel tab is sort of a shallow heel, if you will, this is going to be a true deep heel. For a 72 slot cylinder, my heel tab was +6. We lifted 6 more needles on each side. My deep heel is -5. So let's do that. By -5, I mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll raise the 6th one, and then we'll go around. And heel fork's ready, so let's crank this heel. And it's interesting, a mistake was made, and I have just realized that I've been oh, I'm sorry. So I just realized that I had my telephoto lens on, but hopefully not all was lost. Okay, but I did make a little boo-boo, which is quite easy to make and quite easy to fix if you catch it in time. And see if I can bring this around and show you what I'm talking about. I lifted a bunch of needles and I forgot to lift one, and I think it's fairly obvious it was this one. Now, this one was left in work. I didn't notice that it was left in work. What it did its job. It knitted a stitch. Because I noticed it right away, it is no big deal. We will take this off and we'll just pull that stitch off, raise it, and we'll put this back where it was. So I've done this more than once. I'm not too proud to say that mistake I just made is an easy mistake to make, and I think I heard something or felt something that wasn't quite right, and I was able to quickly address it. All right, so if I hadn't caught this, you would have some loops building up back here. You'd probably end up frogging it. Anyway, so that's that. I'm going to turn this back around and see if we can get back to where we were. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so so we started over here. I raised this needle, so we're doing our decreases. I think I raised this one. There should be 4 left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, so I'm in a good spot. So this needle needed to be raised, and it was raised, so we're good. So we're going to crank around. When you have such a deep heel, it is best if you can get more heel forks in. I have 4. Let's see. I'm going to try to get by with these 3, but I do have a 4th one. All right, we lifted this needle. We should be 1 past the halfway mark. Yep. So they're riding up quite a bit. And I'm glad I'm flexible enough to use my hands to hold the knitting down. But yeah, it is an impressive amount of force. If you're like me, you have shown your machine to friends or family, and I think people are constantly surprised at how much weight is required to get a stitch to knit. So we're closing in on the end of the decreases. I've got just a couple more. And then I'm going to do my standard procedure where I lift the last 2 needles to do a rounded heel. I do it also for toes. I also put them down together, but you have to be careful because one of the 2 latches might not want to be caught. Okay, so we're now doing our increases. And that one, I think, didn't knit. So we'll get it. It's that, yeah, it's the same needle. I don't know what it is. Let's spend a minute together and talk about it. First, let's get the job done where I need to knit it by hand. Let's flip that right over there. So that's knit. Now, let's ask the question, why is this one needle not behaving? Like I said, it's a chronic problem on my machine, that particular location. And I have done it before where I've checked to see if there's a bent latch, but I'd say that the latch is fine. We'll see if it's magnetized. It doesn't appear to be. So I don't know what is doing that. It's a chronic problem right here, and I guess I've trained myself to just kind of watch that location, and that's okay. This is an old machine, and she has her quirks, and I'm happy to work with them. All right, so we're working on our increases. If you have a quirk that your machine has, but you've learned to live with it, put it in the comments. It's fun. It's fun. You know, my daughter pointed out to me with social media, the media is just fine, but she has really helped me understand that it's the comments from other people that are really where some really fun things are. So if you have a comment, I welcome them, because it is fun for me to read them, and I think fun for others too. We have a really vibrant community of crankers, and there's some very smart people out there and very generous people who just have a wealth of information and share it. So I like to think that my channel could be a place where that goes on. All right, so we are still doing, we have to do a bunch of increases, don't we? Because we made this a deep, deep heel. And I believe it was a +5 deep heel. So that didn't it, did it? I don't know if that is something, I'll put it on telephoto, but I'm going to try not to forget that it's on. So here's a running thread here. And that means that there are two stitches that didn't knit. So you pull them forward and you knit them. And if you struggle, that one didn't actually go, did it? If you struggle with getting that darn loop over, it's really hard because it wants to pop off the pick tool. If you struggle with that, one other option for people, if you have a hard time correcting a knit stitch like that, think about doing it this way. Get your needle free, and then just do it like that, and then put it back in. So you can actually use the actual needle as its own tool. Once in a while, the stitches are so tight, or it's hard to tease them apart. So for some reason, when I do it this way, it really helps with those, of course. All right, so I'm going to keep coming around here. And that one missed. I think I need to come back out of telephoto. But I want to show people what it looks like when it misses. And I think most people are aware. When you come around, especially when the heel spring's attached, the yarn wants to close the latch. It's under tension, so it wants to close the latch. So one way around it is to just watch it and hold the yarn with your hand just to make sure that that latch stays open. And that's sometimes what I end up doing. So here it is here. I'm going to use the actual blade shape of the yarn carrier to open it up. So I did that. Let's come back out to wide angle. Okay. And I'm starting to think that it's getting to be close to where I want to decide where I'm going to start my foot. And if you remember, again, just for a visual, here's the halfway mark. We kept, again, I want to check, we kept 3 + 2 more. We kept 5 needles in work. When I do when I'm done with my increases, which I will be shortly, I will not be putting this one back into work. I'll only put the next to the last one back into work on both sides. That is how to avoid a hole. So we're at this point right now where instead of doing this one and this one and then this one and this one and then starting our foot, we're only going to put that back into work, and see, that didn't catch, did it? Put that back into work on the right and this back into work on the left. We're an increase and we are done with our increases. By not putting these in to work with the heel, we're avoiding a hole there. So now I lower this, lower all of these, and we shall reset our yarn carrier. Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to, I'm not sure how many I'm going to crank, but let's just get going. Keeping track of how many rows. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop at 50 rows for a foot. I'm going to look at my situation by taking off all my weights and kind of getting a look. People who just know exactly what they're doing with gauge would have done a swatch, a gauge swatch. They would have cranked this yarn and then measured and see how many rows per inch they were getting. I didn't do that. I'm too impatient for that. It's not a terrible way to crank, but it has its drawbacks because I may not be able to get this to fit. Maybe somebody I was hoping it would fit. Generally speaking, most of the socks that I knit will fit somebody, maybe not the person I thought they would fit. So I'm at 50 and I can tell that's not nearly enough for the ladies in my family anyway, and for sure my son, if he wants these socks. So right now this is telling me it would fit a woman size 4.5. So that's pretty little. So, and you kind of get used to how many rows you knit for socks in particular weight yarn. This is sock yarn, and for the women in my family, I usually knit between 65 and 70, 75 rows if I'm really knitting tighter. For the men, 75 to 85. So that's all to say that right now these won't fit anybody I know, and I'm going to keep cranking. So we're at 50. Let's look at 60 now. 60. Okay, you know what? I think I'm going to go 65, and I think these will either fit me or my daughter. And I'll try to make some for my son, possibly out of the same stuff. But okay, so we're good. Okay, 60. I think I said 65, didn't I? Okay, I'm going to just call it and say that's the sock. Well, of course, I've got to do a toe. I've got my half of the needles out of work, half in work. I've already got the heel spring going, so we're off to the races. 1, 2. I guess that was 1 and 1. Here's 2 and 2. Here's 3 and 3. And let's get these in. And there's a lot of different ways to provide weight in that area of a sock toe or heel. This is just one, using these individual heel weights. But there's a famous V hook, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's how these antique machines were sold, with a V hook that's maybe 8 inches long, stuck here with a second set of weights to hang from them. And I believe our Dave Lord has actually improved on that model with a V hook that he sells that's called a sweet spot, and I've seen it. It involves the same V hook that catches in 2 places. You suspend a weight, but okay. So now we are doing our increases. We did drop, raise 2, raise 2, drop 2, drop 2. Now we're dropping 1 at a time. Ooh. Okay, that one didn't knit. And again, it is, once you get a few socks under your belt, you know your machine and you know some of the quirks. And I felt a weird thing right about there. That was because this stitch did not knit. So it's really tight to pull out. So in this case, let's see, can I do the method I mentioned before, which instead of using a pick tool, I'll just get this and I'll knit it with the actual needle. Imagine that. Okay, so that is a very good way to do it. If it's awkward, in this case, my spring rest was in the way for me to do it, so that worked out really well. Okay, so now I'm going to be doing the increase over here, and we are coming up on, I think we have about 6 more increases to make. I always like to point out to people that the reason I have to press so hard is that I'm trying to overcome difficulty getting past a doubled stitch right here at the edge. And then you get past it, and then these go 100 miles an hour. So it's not what I want to do, but it's kind of what I have to do to get past the resistance on these increases. You're knitting 2 stitches together. So there's a really good example how hard it can be. When you know your machine, you know that that's what it is. And sometimes when it's really hard to knit, it's something else entirely, maybe a problem. But I always know that's the problem, and I can really muscle it. Now I stopped here. I'm not done yet, but I stopped here to see if folks understand what I'm about to do only for the toe. And what I'm about to do, which is only for the toe, is I'm going to complete that left-sided increase. I have 2 more needles to lower, but I'm not going to do them consecutively. I'm going to do them together, lower them together. And I've said it many times, the reason we're doing it this way is that so we have 1 row to complete, and the row that we're going to complete is a Kitchener row. So I think I've left about 20 inches of yarn, maybe 22, and that's enough for Kitchenering. We're going to put some waste yarn in. Now, what color waste yarn does matter here? I definitely don't think my green would be a good contrast. So I'm going to dig around and see if I have anything. Oh my gosh, how about this color pink? In honor of my sweatshirt. It's starting at 9 o'clock, which is a really weird place to start and stop anything, but this is the one exception where you're finishing up a sock, cuff down sock. So we get that started. We get it knitting. Waste yarn, you need enough rows where the stitches won't come undone. We embrace the holes because those holes are great landmarks for grafting a stitch on this side of the cylinder to a stitch on this side. So the holes close up and they help provide a good landmark. All right, so I think I'll finish this. Stopping right where that yarn stops, taking my weights off, and the stem weight. Okay, and then we'll pinch and take a look at it. Let's spend a little time and tease all this apart so we can actually take a look at this heel tab. It's pretty fun. Here's the heel tab. That's the waste yarn in the bonnet. We're going to try to get that off. Here's our very deep heel, and here's the toe. Now, with a hung hem, you have I have trouble. I shouldn't say everybody has trouble, but I have trouble sometimes getting this darn ravel cord apart. But I'm going to try my darndest to get it. I tease, this was needle number 1 and had a lot of stuff going on. Poor needle number 1, and had to hold on to the end of the ravel cord at the beginning of the project yarn. So I like to clear that space of a lot of stuff. All right, so let's pull that out. So now I've got to turn it over. And let's hope for the best. We're going to grab one, and we're going to try our best to see if this will just pull out and be easy. I don't think that was easy, but it did work. Okay, so there is our heel tab. It's a short rows, and remember those little holes? You can't see them. They're fine, right? Then we hung our hem, and here is the sock. This sock, pretty good, pretty good. Now, if I wanted to match the next one, let me show you what I would do.